Lando Norris's fantastic win in Miami was my highlight of the season, and I'm sure the same is true for a lot of you. Carlos Sainz's win in Australia was nice and all, but to see someone beat Max on track, well, that was just outstanding. And that's nothing against Max, it's just nice to see someone else win for once. You can say what you want about safety cars and what would have happened if it hadn't come when it did or if it didn't come at all, but just like Max said, if my mum had balls, she would be my dad. Stop adding asterixes to race wins and results and just enjoy it is what I say. That win did come off the back of some big upgrades for McLaren though, and if the team are to be believed, we've only seen a fraction of their power. The result in Miami has led to a lot of claims about title challenges, which frankly seem a little bit far-fetched. Well, I'm George, you're watching F1 Reverse, this is Don't At Me, and I really need to talk about McLaren's title challenge. As impressive as Lando Norris's win in Miami was, he did have a big helping hand. And no, I'm not talking about the safety car, I'm not talking about my mum having balls being my dad. I'm talking about the amount of upgrades that McLaren bought. McLaren literally had a full car of upgrades to help improve performance in Miami. Lando Norris had all of them, Oscar Piastri had half, he's going to get the rest of them in Imola. Upgrading F1 cars is really hard, something Mercedes have shown over the past 3 years. When you bring these massive upgrade packages, getting everything to work together is almost impossible. F1 cars only work if everything is working in harmony. If you change one little thing, you can kind of tweak stuff and you can get that working with the rest of the car and everything's great. But when you do what McLaren did and bring basically a brand new car, getting it all to work together at once and the whole thing not falling apart, it was just incredible. The upgrade package they bought included a new front wing, new front suspension geometry, a revised front brake duct and winglet, a completely revised floor, new bodywork, and engine covers, and getting all of that together was just insane. Adrian Newey would have been proud of getting that lot to work together. And what's even crazier is that they did it on a sprint weekend with just 1 hour of free practice. That's just 1 hour of using those parts, and they managed to get it all together in such a way that they could win a race with it. Sprint weekend rules have changed for this season. You can now change your car in between the sprint race and the actual Grand Prix qualifying, but the car they used in the sprint race didn't actually race, courtesy of Lewis Hamilton taking everyone out at turn 1. And I mean, outstanding. Like, absolutely incredible that they got the whole thing together. But what I loved about it was they could have waited till Europe, and we've got Imola next weekend, but they just decided to go full YOLO and made it work in Miami, and, chef's kiss, mwah, beautiful. By doing what they did, they showed two things. Firstly, they showed that they have absolute faith in the factory team to say, yep, you're saying these upgrades are going to work, we'll slap them on the car, we only need an hour, we trust what you're saying. And secondly, the factory has to have a huge amount of confidence in the direction they're going to be able to go to the race team and say, take these upgrades, we know there's only an hour worth of testing, do it anyway, they will work. Last season, McLaren were terrible in Miami. I think Lando qualified 17th and finished 18th. They were awful. 12 months later, they've come back with a car and they've won the race. That is some horrifying development form, and the rest of the grid need to be really worried, especially Red Bull. So in all the excitement after the race, and there was a lot of excitement, but in all the excitement, there was a really interesting quote from Will Joseph, who is Lando Norris's race engineer. And he said, "The package should favour other circuits more than it does here in Miami." Now, if Lando winning hadn't got people excited, then this comment really sent things into hyperdrive. By sorting out the front end of the car with the new wing, the new suspension, the new brakes, everything behind it now works much better as well. The aerodynamic profile coming off that front end is much prettier, it makes everything behind it much happier. As McLaren boss Andrea Stella explained, The focus of these upgrades was on creating efficient downforce, which wasn't going to create more drag. So while these new parts might have added downforce by clearing up the aerodynamics at the front of the car as well, they've actually reduced the drag that everything else is creating. And they managed to take parts off and be like, yeah, okay, no, the rear wing doesn't need to be as big, we don't need that much downforce coming from it because everything else is working better. With this upgrade, McLaren have really turned things around. They didn't start the season in the way they wanted, just like last year, but now they've got this feels like the start of the season for them. Something very similar happened last season. In 2023, they were abysmal. Like I already said, Miami was awful for them, and it was in Austria that things really turned around. Lando went from 3-point finishes in 8 races to finishing 4th and then 2nd twice in a row, with the upgrade that he got there. From Singapore onwards, he picked up the 2nd most points of any driver in the season. McLaren finished last year really strongly, and clearly the in-season development is on point, potentially even better than Red Bull's, you could argue. The problem last season was Lando started so badly that there was just no way he was going to make an impact in the Drivers' Championship, and there was no way McLaren were going to make an impact in the Constructors' Championship either. This year is different though. Currently, Lando sits 53 points behind Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. He's not started the season well. I think he finished 6th and 8th in the first 2 races, which, is a terrible points deficit to get started on. It is a big gap, but bigger points differences have been turned over in the past when you adjust the point system to the modern point system. If Lando could overcome that 53 points difference, it would be the 4th biggest points deficit ever overcome in the history of the sport. Which means 3 other people have overcome bigger ones, which means it can happen. On top of that, there's a hell of a lot of races left, and there's 4 sprint races as well thrown on there for good measure. Now, Max did score more points than Lando in Miami, which is the first time that a race winner has not scored the most points on a weekend. Again, Lewis Hamilton can be thanked for that. So, is a title challenge possible? Well, this season they started weakly again, but with this new upgrade, they have taken a massive step like they did in Austria last year, and they have started the season better this year, and this upgrade has probably come early enough, but a title challenge this year? The truth is that Max's start to the season has given him a massive lead, and even if Red Bull and McLaren are now kind of evenly matched, overhauling 53 points in 18 races and 4 sprints is going to be tough. It is possible, but it's such a disadvantage to start the season with. If this upgrade package had been ready at the start of the season and Lando had some better finishes, especially those first 2 races, then maybe you could argue that it's close enough that he'd be able to do it. The package might even be stronger than we think it is as well, and they could go on a crazy win streak and, Lando could win every race for the rest of the season. That could happen. I'm not going to be brave enough to say it is though. That's not a call that I think anybody should be making yet, despite apparently loads of people making that call. The Constructors' title this season though, well, that could be possible. Ferrari are going to be in the mix from Imola onwards, and Oscar will have a fully upgraded car from Imola as well. With that coming in, Sergio Perez's ability to pick up points is going to come under serious pressure. If Red Bull come under threat, and you've got Oscar, and you've got Carlos, and you've got Charles Leclerc starting to really challenge Checo for point finishes, his seat and a final Constructors' Championship for Adrian Newey at Red Bull could really be under threat. Checo's shown in the past at Red Bull that when people are able to challenge Red Bull, he does not have the same performance as Max. We all know that, we all accept it. While they've been this far ahead, it's kind of been fine, he's been able to get away with it, he's picked up all the 2nd place finishes. But if this McLaren upgrade is as good as it looks, and if Ferrari can improve, and they've already shown that actually they can challenge Checo, then a Constructors' Championship for McLaren in 2024, I can definitely see that happening. But honestly though, a Drivers' Championship for Lando this year, it's not going to happen. 2025 has to be their target, and Lando's already admitted it. After his win in some of the post-race interviews, he said he will 100% be a contender for next season's Drivers' Championship. But this season, it's just going to be a step too far. So, I'm sorry to rain on everyone's parade, I'm sorry to piss on your chips, but Lando Norris is not going to fight for a driver's title this season. And anyone saying it is just living in a fantasy realm. Do I wish he would? Absolutely. You know what? I'd love him to run Max close, and even if he doesn't win it, to create a title fight, and that's definitely possible. He can definitely create a title fight. He can get himself in that chase and put the pressure on. But actually winning a driver's title this season, not going to happen. Obviously, in 6 months' time, when he does go and win the title, please don't come back and at me.